So, there's this common misconception that working out is not for nerds. I mean, just think about the number of times you've heard someone say, that guy is really jacked, he must be dumb. It's quite common these days, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. The thing is that whether you have a high IQ or not, taking care of your body and health is always going to be a smart move. You might know this, but there are countless successful CEOs and entrepreneurs who hit the gym regularly and praise the importance of fitness in one's mental and physical well-being, but also in developing creativity and becoming more productive. And guess what? Most of these people are actually nerds, meaning that they are obsessed with learning as much as possible about the things they're interested in, whether that's business or biceps. So yeah, the gym isn't exclusive to a specific category of people. Although for us nerds, it's true that getting into working out isn't that straightforward. It took me nearly 2 years to take the first step and finally begin my journey in the gym, because I had a ton of questions swirling around in my head. How do I even use all of this equipment? What's the best way to plan my workouts? What should I eat for hypertrophy? How often do I need to show up there? As you can see, there were a lot of blockers for me back then, and maybe this wouldn't have been an issue for a non-nerd. They would probably just start and figure things out on the way. But as a nerd, you typically want to research everything in advance to make sure you do things right and maximize your potential from day one. Nerds are all about accelerating their progress in pretty much anything they do. And so if that sounds familiar, then this is the right video for you. Because I'm going to share everything you need to know about going to the gym, so you don't have to overthink it any longer. We're going to talk about the theory behind muscle growth, the different muscle groups that you need to train and the corresponding exercises. We're also going to dive into some tips and tricks for proper execution and implementation of these exercises. And lastly, we're gonna talk about nutrition and supplementation. Let's go. First, the philosophy behind hypertrophy. There's a two-part process that needs to happen over and over again in order to build muscle. The first part is the actual training, where you're putting stress in the form of heavy load on a muscle in order to produce micro tears in its fibers. You essentially need to purposefully break some of these fibers to make room for new, stronger and larger ones to develop. After that comes the recovery part, and to make it more efficient, you need a combination of two things: protein intake, which will stimulate the reconstruction of the muscle fibers, and rest, which will provide the necessary time for this process to finish. Once that's done, you're good to start it all over again. So, in short, the gym will help you break some muscle fibers, while sleeping and eating properly will repair the damage and make you stronger. It's vital to understand that both of these are equally important. Going to the gym is only 50% of the equation, or even less, because sacrificing the other stuff for more workouts can have suboptimal results. Think of your body as a forge where you're trying to make a new sword. Training to get those micro tears in the fibers is like heating up the piece of steel to give it proper form. But just like a sword needs time to cool and harden, your muscles need rest and proper nutrition to repair and grow stronger. It's not just about working out hard, it's about giving your body a chance to recover. While it's true that training too little is going to make no difference, it's also true that overtraining will ruin your progress. So instead of constantly hammering that hot metal without interruption, make sure to have enough time for rest, so you can forge a stronger and healthier body. Next up, let's talk about what muscle groups you need to train and how to target each of them individually. I think that the best way to get into this would be to put my own workout program on the screen and discuss its structure. Obviously, the goal is not to convince you to do the same things as I do, because when it comes to gym exercises, there is no shortage of options. However, once you understand what are the key points of a good and complete chest workout, for example, you'll be able to create your own version with whatever exercises you prefer. Before we dive in, just a quick heads up. You'll see that on Arms Day I've included the chest and the back exercise, and that's because I'm a little bit behind on those compared to my arms. There's no other reason, and so you don't need to do the same. Okay, that being said, let's start with the chest day. Here you need to focus on 3 areas: the upper chest, the middle chest and the lower chest. For each one, it's preferable to have one compound exercise and one isolation exercise. So there will be a total of 6. A compound exercise will recruit more than just the target muscle, and that allows you to use more weight. So it's better to just do this one first. Now, for the upper chest we have the 30 degrees incline dumbbell bench press and the supinated dumbbell front raise, which is similar to a low to high cable chest fly, but with dumbbells. Then for the middle chest we have the flat dumbbell bench press and the cable crossovers. And finally, for the lower chest we have the chest dips, performed with flared out elbows and the body slightly angled forward, and the high to low cable flies. The sets are displayed on screen and we'll talk about the reps a bit later in the tips and tricks category. For the back we have to worry about width and thickness. The 2 exercises for width are both pull-ups or anything similar like assisted pull-ups or wide grip lat pull-downs, but in my opinion you can feel the pull-up much better than a lat pull-down, although both of them have the same movement pattern, so you could technically replace one with the other. For thickness, there's the bent over barbell row, a very popular and effective exercises for working your entire back, the close grip lat pull-down and the seated machine row for upper back. The pulling from above movement will generally emphasize the width of your back, while the rowing movements will take care of the thickness. When it comes to the shoulders, we're looking again at 3 key areas: the front delts, the lateral delts and the rear delts. To target the front delts, try seated dumbbell shoulder presses and front plate raises. For the lateral delts, opt for various types of lateral raises, of course. And for the rear delts, if you have access to a machine, go for the rear delt flies. If not, seated dumbbell reverse flies are a good alternative. We're almost there. In the arms day, you'll want to target the short head of the biceps with a supinated bicep curl. This is important because it will give your biceps a fuller, rounder look. Then, you also want to work the long head by doing incline bicep curls. I prefer the 60-degree angle of the bench, but 45 is also fine. For the triceps, if you really want to feel the burn on that long head, which is 60 to 70% of the triceps, do skull crushers. The other 2 heads of the triceps are the lateral and medial head, which you can work with a simple triceps pushdown. And you're done with the arms. Last but not least, everyone's favorite, the leg day. Most of the leg is composed of the quads and the hamstrings, and so that's what I like to focus on. I prefer using the Smith machine for squats because it feels more comfortable and it does a better job isolating the quads. Then I'll hit the hamstrings with some stiff leg deadlifts. After that it's back lunges for quads, followed by leg curls for hamstrings again. And finally some calf raises. That's it, done. Now let's move to something more exciting, the tips and tricks. One little change in the input or in the way you think about doing an exercise can make a huge difference in the output. I really wish I had some of these guidelines all together back when I started. I mean, they were out there scattered on the internet, but there were so many contradicting opinions. And so after trying different techniques and learning from experience, here is my list of tips. Starting with probably the most important one. Create the mind-muscle connection. This should be your primary goal if you're just getting started with working out. Having mind-muscle connection means feeling the contraction on a specific muscle when you mentally focus on it. For example, if you're doing bicep curls, you should be able to concentrate the effort on a specific area of the biceps, either the long head or the short head. Essentially, the mind-muscle connection is all about isolating and focusing the tension on a single part of the body during your training. That's how you maximize growth and take the most out of an exercise, really. Now, this will eventually develop in time, even if it's not your primary goal right now. But again, as a beginner, it's a very valuable resource because it's going to accelerate your progress further down the line. So if you're committed to developing this early on, you need to follow 2 rules. 1. Don't go heavy. Perform the exercises with lighter weights so you don't overload the target area to the point where adjacent muscles need to step in and help. And 2. Do your reps slowly. Control the movement and really tighten the muscles at the end of each rep to feel that burn. If you get used to doing these two things in the beginning of your gym journey, you'll not only build the foundation of proper form when training, but more importantly, you'll protect yourself from injury. For the second tip, after you've improved the mind-muscle connection, you can start to progressively overload your exercises. If you want to see results in the gym, you need to gradually increase the weights over time. The muscles aren't going to grow if you give them the same amount of tension long term, because it will become less and less challenging. So when you become comfortable with the current weights you're using, feel free to step up, set a new challenge and overcome it. Like if you're now able to do 10 reps with a 40 kg bench press, the next goal would be to perform 10 reps with a 50 kg bench press, and so on. This is really the fun part, because you're able to see the progress that you're making. And it's addictive, trust me. You'll want more and more of the positive emotions you get from growing, and that's what's going to keep you in the gym long term. So progressive overload, very important. The third tip is don't count the reps. Now this might be controversial, and I'm sure that counting the reps works for some people. But as a beginner, this can actually be a distraction. Focusing on the numbers instead of the actual work that your muscles have to do in order to grow is the wrong approach in my opinion. Like, there's no point in doing a set of 10 repetitions if you could do 15 without altering your form. Remember what we talked about in the beginning. Muscle growth happens as a result of breaking the fibers, not doing X amount of reps. And if you want to rip those fibers, you need to provide enough stress and tension during each set. You want to fatigue the muscle, and that translates to getting as close as possible to failure. You know you've reached failure when you couldn't do any other rep even if you wanted to. That's my personal approach to training, and I've seen good results, so I highly recommend it. Of course, if you're using heavier weights, don't go to actual failure, because you need that little bit of strength to rack the weights. The worst feeling in the gym is having an 80 kg bar on your chest and not being able to move it. The fourth tip I have for you is to never skip warm-up. Not warming up before your training is the quickest way to injure yourself, and surely you don't want that. Now you might get away with skipping warm-up if you're young, like 20 years old, but it's still risky, and it's really not worth trying to save those extra few minutes, you know? Just do some stretches before every workout and use some light weights to get the blood flowing in the area that you're going to train. That's it. The last tip of this video is choosing and sticking to the exercises that work for you. You don't need to do the most popular or the most grueling workout in order to make progress. Everyone has different needs, preferences and goals, and that's why there is such a great diversity of routines out there. Technically, you could become stronger and more muscular with any exercise, really. Sure, there are some guidelines that make an exercise more suitable than others over the long term, but ultimately, the only language that your muscles speak is tension. They don't know how they got it, like from which kind of exercise. So as long as you provide what they need, you're going to see results. And that's why I recommend you choose the exercises that feel good to you and that you enjoy doing. Have some fun in the gym, because it's not only about hard work. The only thing that you need to pay attention to is training all of the muscle groups that we discussed about in the previous section. Like, yeah, you should choose the exercising that you enjoy doing, but don't forget to train your upper chest, for example. Make sure to have every body part covered. Now, as I said earlier, there are a few guidelines that can make an exercise better than the others. The first one is that it should be safe for you to perform. If you notice any unusual pain during a specific exercise, stop doing it immediately. Really, you don't want to risk injury. Choose something more comfortable. I personally never do barbell bench presses because it puts too much strain on my wrists and my shoulders. So be careful with these kinds of things. The second guideline is that an exercise should have a good range of motion, so your muscles can have more room or space to stretch and contract. And the last guideline, an exercise should allow for progressive overload. So these were the tips that I had for you. But there's one more thing that you need to get right as soon as possible, which is creating a gym schedule that you can stick with. No amount of tips and tricks is going to help you fulfill your fitness goals if your schedule is all over the place. Consistency is key with everything, really. So try to make it easy for you to stay consistent over a long period of time. It's time to get into the other half of the equation, nutrition. There's that saying, you can't out-train a bad diet, and it's completely true. You could lift for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and all of that will amount to nothing if you only eat junk food and sugary sweets. So what should we eat to complement our gym efforts? Well, the gym diet is pretty straightforward. Regardless of what your goal is, hypertrophy, losing weight, becoming stronger, all you need to do is eat 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass and 1 gram of fats per kilogram of body mass. And make sure to do it in a healthy way. You don't need to overcomplicate things. Just eat this much protein and fat along with some carbs and you'll be fine. Now if you want to get bigger, you'll want to eat more carbs than usual. And that is typically referred to as bulking. But if you want to lose weight, you should cut down the carbs a little. That's referred to as cutting. And that's everything there is to it, really. Just to make sure this isn't counterintuitive, the reason why you still need to eat 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass even when you're trying to lose weight is that you want to protect your muscle mass as much as possible. Without a high protein intake, when you lose fat, you'll also lose a big chunk of muscle. And all of your hard work and progress in the gym will go down the drain. And that's really discouraging, so make sure to eat your protein. Before ending this video, let's quickly talk about supplements. Do you need them? Are they necessary for hypertrophy or losing weight? Not really. As long as you have a good diet that can help you achieve the numbers we talked about earlier, then you don't need to take anything. I personally only use protein powder and a simple muscle gainer, but that's because I want to increase in weight and I'm not really a fan of spending too much time in the kitchen. They're just food, really. If you can afford it, then there's nothing wrong with taking supplements. Just make sure you don't see them as a replacement for actual food, because that's not what they're for. If you think you can skip lunch for 2 protein shakes, that's the wrong way to go. Your stomach will suffer and ultimately it will do more harm than good. So, depending on your goals, supplements can be useful, but they're not necessary. What matters is that you train hard in the gym and you rest and eat well at home. And that will wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to press the like button and subscribe to the channel, because it really helps with my motivation to continue. Thanks for staying until the end, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!